The doors of the throne hall slammed shut behind me before I had taken even 3 steps inside, and in that instant, I understood there was no walking back out the way I came. The air was thick and cold, carrying a strange metallic scent that clung to the back of my throat. Tall figures lined the walls on both sides, their long necks turning slowly to watch me, their eyes glinting like polished glass. At the far end of the hall, on a throne that looked like it had grown out of the stone floor itself, sat Queen Ashari, ruler of the Veiled Dominion. She did not rise. She did not need to. Even seated, she looked taller than any human I had ever stood beside. My name is Daniel Cross, and I was the only person from Earth allowed inside that hall that day. A small drone hovered near my shoulder, its lens blinking, ready to translate every word I said into her language and every word she said back into mine. Everyone on my side expected me to stand quietly and let that little machine do all the talking. That was the plan. That was the safe plan. Queen Ashari studied me the way someone studies an unfamiliar insect that has wandered onto their table, deciding whether it deserves attention or simply needs to be swept away. Her crest, a fan of thin ridges behind her head, moved in slow, careful pulses. Nobody on our side had figured out yet what those pulses meant, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. She spoke, and her voice came out layered, 2 tones running together like a chord played on an instrument no human hands could ever build. So this is the creature that survived the welcome my fleet prepared for it. The drone at my shoulder stayed silent, still working through the layered sound, still trying to catch up. Half a second of silence does not sound like much, but in that hall, hesitation before a queen was treated as an insult that could end a person's future in an instant. I did not wait for the machine. "Your fleet did not offer much of a welcome, Your Majesty," I said, speaking her language directly, using both tones together the way I had trained myself to do for 4 long years back home, locked away in a small practice room, repeating sounds until my throat ached, because I believed that one day this exact moment might arrive. The hall went silent in a way that felt heavier than silence usually feels. The soft rustling sound coming from the tall figures along the walls stopped completely, all at once, as if every one of them had stopped breathing together. The Queen's crest froze in place. "You speak our sacred tongue," she said, and this time, there was no second tone underneath her words at all, just one flat note, the sound of someone caught completely off guard. "Not perfectly," I admitted, still answering in her language, "but well enough to understand what your commanders said before they tried to destroy my ship." Her crest gave a quick, sharp twitch, nothing like the slow, steady pulse from before. One of the tall figures near the wall made a small clicking noise and then went rigid, as though frightened of being noticed. "You must understand," the Queen said slowly, "this language is never given to outsiders. It is not written anywhere. It is not recorded for machines to study. It lives only in the breath of those born into our court." "I understand that completely," I said. "That is exactly why I never told anyone on your side that I had learned it. I wanted to see what your people would say when they believed no human could possibly understand them." I watched the realization spread across her face, if you could call it a face, as she worked out everything her fleet had said over open channels, while assuming those words were safe from human ears. Every private comment, every quiet insult, every order given in the small gap of time before the translator machine could catch up and repeat it back to me in plain English. "You heard everything," she said, her voice dropping lower. "Every single word, Your Majesty, including the moment your fleet commander called my ship a tiny insect, wearing the shape of a warship, only seconds before he gave the order to destroy it." The tall figures along the walls stood completely still now, and I did not need years of training to recognize what that stillness meant. It meant fear. It meant they understood exactly what I had just proven, that nothing said in their most private language had truly been private at all. The Queen said nothing for a long moment. Her crest settled into a slow, careful rhythm, and when she finally spoke again, both tones returned to her voice. But underneath the calm surface, I caught the smallest shift, something that felt very close to reconsideration. "You entered this hall expecting to rely on that little machine beside you," she said, "and yet you did not need it once. I expected your people to assume a translator meant I did not understand a single word you said," I answered. "I came prepared to prove otherwise, because a machine speaking your language is only a tool, but a person speaking your language is a choice, and I wanted you to see that difference clearly before we discussed anything else between our two peoples." For the first time since I had walked through those doors, Queen Ashari rose from her throne. She unfolded upward, taller than I had even guessed while she was seated, her crest opening wide behind her head like a fan catching the wind. Every single figure along the walls dropped down at once, bending low in a wave that moved through the hall like water. She did not bow. Queens, I had learned, never bow. But she tilted her head slightly, just enough for me to notice, and spoke 4 short words in what I would later learn was the oldest and rarest form of her language, reserved only for addressing someone treated as an equal. "Then let us begin our discussion properly." My little drone finally caught up, chirping the translation into my earpiece a full second late, and this time I let it speak. Some words are meant for the room and the people standing in it. Other words are meant to be recorded, confirmed, and remembered for history. I had already made the point I needed to make. Now it was time to sit down and talk like two civilizations that actually wanted to understand each other. Behind me, I could hear the tall figures slowly rising again, whispering among themselves in hushed, surprised tones about the small, strange visitor who had walked into their queen's hall expecting to need a translator, only to answer her instead in her own sacred language. I allowed myself a small, careful smile, keeping my mouth closed just slightly, exactly as I had been trained before entering, because even something as simple as showing teeth could be misunderstood as a threat here. Queen Ashari gestured for a smaller chair to be brought forward, something closer to her own height than what I expected, a small gesture that told me more about her intentions than any words could have. As I sat, she leaned forward slightly, studying me with something that had shifted from suspicion into open curiosity. "Tell me, human," she said, "how does a single person from your world come to learn a language that has never once left the walls of this court?" I told her the truth. I explained how a research team from Earth had intercepted fragments of court transmissions years earlier, tiny scraps of sound recorded by accident during earlier contact attempts that had gone badly. Most of my colleagues believed the language could never be reconstructed from such small pieces. I disagreed. I spent years piecing together patterns, testing sounds, recording myself for hours, until the layered tones finally felt natural instead of forced. "Why would you commit so much of your own time to something so difficult?" she asked, "when your leaders clearly believed the translator machines would be enough?" "Because machines translate words," I answered, "but they cannot translate trust. I wanted your people to see that humans were willing to work just as hard to understand you as we hoped you would work to understand us." Her crest pulsed gently again, and this time even I could guess what it meant. Something like respect had settled into the room, replacing the earlier tension that had filled the air the moment I walked through those tall doors. We spoke for a long while after that, moving slowly away from suspicion and toward something closer to real conversation. She asked about my home, about the small room where I had practiced her language for years, about the sound of Earth's oceans, something her scouts had reported but never fully understood. I asked about her court, about the meaning behind the different crest movements, about the history hidden inside a language that had never once been written down. By the time our meeting ended, the mood inside that hall had changed completely. The tall figures along the walls no longer stood rigid with fear. Instead, they watched with quiet curiosity, whispering softly to one another, clearly reconsidering everything they thought they knew about the small, strange creatures from a faraway blue world. As I finally rose to leave, Queen Ashari spoke once more, her voice calm and steady, carrying both tones together in perfect balance. "You have given my people a great deal to think about today, Daniel Cross. Few outsiders have ever earned the right to speak our tongue, and fewer still have earned it through patience rather than force." I bowed my head slightly, careful to match the respect she had shown me earlier. "I did not come here looking for power over your people, Your Majesty. I came here hoping we might finally understand each other, and I believe today we took the first real step toward that." As the tall doors opened once more to let me leave, I felt something settle inside my chest, a quiet kind of relief, mixed with something close to pride. I had walked into that hall expecting to rely on a small machine hovering by my shoulder. Instead, I walked out, having proven that understanding another people begins not with clever tools, but with the simple, patient choice to learn their language before ever asking them to speak yours.